Pretty much every survival scenario includes water as the key ingredient for staying alive. The thing is, humans can survive without food, and shelter may not be necessary right away, unless you're stuck in freezing cold conditions. Not drinking any water for 24 hours is survivable, but it takes a toll on your body. You might not feel it at first, but lack of water depletes both your physical and mental strength. This makes performing vital tasks very difficult. Just 3 days without water will slowly begin to shut your body down for good. The reason water is so important is that it helps you circulate blood, process food, think clearly, carry out internal processes, and regulate body temperature by preventing hypo and hyperthermia. By this point in your life, you must have some idea of how crucial water is to your survival. Luckily for you, this video will teach you all you need to know about how to find water in the wild. But before we get to that, make sure you drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. Always filter. Just because you find water in the wild, it doesn't mean you should drink it right away. Water can be found in streams, lakes, and plants, but any sensible survival expert will tell you that it should always be purified or filtered before drinking. However, this may not always be possible because you might not have the necessary equipment. You need to be aware of the fact that any water, no matter how clean it may seem, could potentially carry harmful bacteria. Whether you're going to drink it or not is up to you, but that's a risk people usually take when they're in a life or death situation. Finding water. There are several ways of collecting water when stranded in the wilderness, and each one has the same first step. Find a source of water. Whether it's a stream, a river, or a lake, water should be the first item on your list. Your best option is to find clear and flowing water because it doesn't allow bacteria to fester. Once you start looking for water, keep an eye out for streams. Rivers are usually polluted upstream, and lakes or ponds are stagnant, which increases the chance for bacteria even more. But how do you find water? The first thing you should do is use your senses to your advantage. For example, if you stand still, you might be able to hear running water. Next, use your eyes to try and locate animal tracks, as they could potentially lead to water. If you notice many birds flying towards the same direction, especially in the mornings or evenings, you might want to follow them as they could lead you to water. Observing animal behavior is extremely important when you're lost, and if you find yourself in a desert, try to see if there are any tracks in the sand, because they will almost always lead to water. Wherever you get lost, try to get to higher grounds to find valleys, ditches, or gullies, because that's also where you might find the life-saving liquid. Collecting rainwater. Clean rainwater is abundant in the wild, mostly because there aren't any pollutions and emissions for the rain to travel through on its way down. There are two primary ways you can collect rainwater in the wild. The first way is to take any containers you might have on you and leave them out to collect drops. The second is to take a piece of impermeable clothing, tarp, or plastic sheeting, tie the corners to trees, and put a stone in the middle to create a depression and collect water. Collect heavy morning dew. The easiest way to collect morning dew is to tie absorbent clothes around your ankles and take a walk through tall grass before sunrise. If you don't have clothes to spare, you can use tufts of fine grass. Next, you just wring out the collected morning dew and repeat. However, you should be careful not to collect dew from poisonous plants, as it could potentially kill you. Fruits and veggies. Believe it or not, fruits, veggies, cacti, pulpy and fleshy plants contain high concentrations of water. You can even find water in plant roots. This means that you can take any of these and smash them with a rock into a pulp to collect the liquid. You won't get much, but it's better than nothing. This comes in handy if you're lost in the tropics, where such fruits and veggies exist in abundance. The best example is coconut, but bear in mind that ripe coconut milk acts as a laxative, which will only get you more dehydrated. What you should do is find unripe green coconuts to drink milk from. Plant transpiration. Plant transpiration is a process in which moisture is carried all the way from the plant's roots to the underside of the plant's leaves. Once the water gets there, it vaporizes into the atmosphere, and this is something you can use to your advantage. What you need to do is tie a bag or any other impermeable material around a leafy tree or bush early in the morning. Place a rock inside the bag that's heavy enough to weigh it down but won't tear the bag off the leaves. During the day, the plant will transpire and produce moisture, but instead of vaporizing into the atmosphere, the moisture will collect at the bottom of your bag. Dig an underground still. There are two types of stills, above ground and underground. In comparison to other methods, stills are a fairly reliable source of water because you have a rough idea of how much water you're going to get, and this helps you ration the water better. Out of the two, the underground still collects more water, but the above ground one can be useful as well, especially if you're not strong enough to dig a large hole. Here's what you need to do to create an underground still. First, you need to get the following supplies. A container, the largest you can find. clear plastic sheeting, any type of digging tool, some rocks, and something you can use as a drinking straw or tube, but this is not a must. Next, to build a still, follow these instructions. Try to find an area that gets as much sunlight as possible during the day. Dig a pit that's shaped like a ball, 3 feet wide and 2 feet deep. Dig another small hole within the pit for your container. If you have a drinking straw or a tube, attach it to the bottom of the container. If not, skip this step. Place your container into the pit and run the tubing or straw out of the latter. Cover the pit with a plastic sheet. Pour soil over the edges of the sheet and use rocks to keep everything firmly in place. Take a small rock and put it in the center of the sheet so it hangs over the container, forming an inverted cone. If you have a straw or tube, you can drink the water straight from the container. If not, take the container out to drink or store the water. Then put the container back into the pit once you're done. Cold or snowy conditions. Snow and ice are abundant in the mountains, sometimes even throughout the entire year. They are a good source of fresh water, but try not to eat snow as it will dehydrate you. If you're lost somewhere in the polar region, you can turn to icebergs as a good source of fresh water. The reason why you should use icebergs as a source of water is the fact that just like salt water, salty ice is not good for you. To distinguish salty ice from freshwater ice, you just need to pay attention to its color. Opaque and gray ice is salty, whereas freshwater ice appears bluish. Freshwater ice also has a crystalline structure, and you can easily break it off with a knife. But what if there aren't any icebergs? In case you are stranded on a boat and surrounded by salt water, try to capture some of the water into a container and let it freeze. Once frozen, you will find a sort of slushy water in the middle and ice around it. The ice around the slush is the fresh water as it freezes first. You just have to get rid of the slush and the ice is ready for you to melt and drink. Snow and ice are a great source of water, but they should always be purified before consumption. If you consume ice without melting and purifying it first, you will lower your body temperature and force your metabolism to work even harder to keep you warm. This will eventually lead to dehydration. If you're not sure how to melt the snow, you can do it by adding it to existing water, no matter the amount. Mix a little snow with as little water as you have, shake the container until the snow melts, and then repeat. If you're trying to heat the snow to melt it, keep in mind that heating ice or snow directly will cause it to scorch and it will not taste good. The very last thing you should do is what we've seen Bear Grylls do so many times. But drinking your own pee should be done only if you exhaust every other option. Finding water is not as hard as it sounds, and drinking urine can cause more harm than good. Yes, urine is 95% water, but the other 5% is full of waste that could lead to kidney failure. So try to find water before you resort to this.